Our world is so glorious. We are just such majestic beings. And once we can start seeing that and feeling that, this is when we're creating the new world.
Okay, hey everyone, welcome to the Happy Life Agenda. I'm Dani C, and I am so excited. Today I am joined by Micheline Green, and she is going to teach us all the things about how to become love in action. She is an integral master coach and spiritual warrior. So welcome, Micheline. Tell us a little bit about yourself and what brought you here today. What are you up to?
Hi, Dani. Thanks so much for having me. I'm so grateful that we get to connect in this space. Yeah, so what brought me to where I am today? Well, that's a big question, but I'll narrow it down as quickly as I can. You mentioned a spiritual warrior, and that is something that I feel has been with me for a very long time. From a young child, actually. I've had some pretty mystical spiritual experiences when I was a child. And I also lived in this world, and so had some traumas in my childhood that had me shut down a lot of that kind of spiritual side, the recognition that there is something else beyond this world. And so then learned how to survive really in this world, which led me, little journey, but through child protection was one of my very first jobs out of university. I was someone who really enjoyed crisis situation. I could manage it, I could handle it. And I've also been a really fierce advocate for children. I feel that due to my own trauma in my childhood, that is something that unconsciously I gravitated towards. And so did child protection in rural settings and also in urban settings, and then had my own kids. And so I cannot go back to that job because it's not a job you just leave at the end of the day. It is something that affected me in a lot of ways. I was 24 years old and investigating deep sexual abuse, generational trauma. I actually put an 84-year-old pedophile into jail. Yeah, it was intense.
Oh my goodness.
But then I had my own children. I learned a lot. I learned a lot about generational trauma, and I could see it. I could see it happening from generation to generation to generation. And I watched that pattern showing up. And so then I went into school counseling. I've got my master's in counseling. And then I thought I'll just work with my kids and in their school and on the same kind of timeline that they have. And then I kind of started seeing these teachers and how they were interacting with the children. And they were really they don't listen and they don't respect us. And this is 20 years ago, right? So we were seeing a lot of behavioral changes. This is when ADHD was coming up and autism and all these disorders were kind of really coming online. And I could see how there was a lot of blame going around. So we had teachers wanting to blame parents, parents wanting to blame teachers, both of them kind of blaming the administration. But when I started to hear adults blaming the child, that's when I felt like my warrior come online and say, hell no, this is a 7-year-old, or this is a 6-year-old, or this is a 12-year-old. How could we possibly put blame on this child? And so what I started noticing back then, which became very clear to me, was this teacher was struggling, and they would always bring me their child and please fix him. You could just see it in their face. They never said those words, but it was right? So I would work with the child in the ways that I would work with the child and have the child go back to the class with new strategies. And the next day, same teacher, same child, right back. So I saw this pattern happening again and again. And so then I started asking, well, if it's not this teacher is 30 years and this was in a Waldorf school, 30 years Waldorf teacher, this child is 8 or 9 years old. And what I recognized, it wasn't the child and it wasn't the teacher. It was the connection between the two of them was where the breakdown was happening. Now, I could see this pattern, and yet I didn't have the skills. But I asked the question, a very deep question: how do we create change as an individual, as an organization, as a team? And so I started asking that question, and that when you ask powerful questions, life has a way of showing up. And so I had to go through many, many, many of my own deep life lessons to come back to myself, to my own trauma, my own patterns, how I was raising my own kids, how my parents raised me, the marriage I was in. I mean, divorce and bankruptcy and all of the stuff that life can throw at you to learn the lessons. And so here I am now. My kids are all, as I say, blessed and released, they're on their own. And I really shifted the way I was parenting my children. I really shifted. So not only was I conscious parenting educator for the last 30 years, but I've also now stepped into coaching. And how do we coach? So I've coached my own children. I've coached teachers. I've coached leaders. I've coached executives. I've coached celebrities and entrepreneurs and everybody out there who's really working to make change in their life. And that's where it needs to start. Are you ready to say yes? Yes, I need the change. I want the change and I'm ready for the change, because most people say, yes, I'm ready for change, but not too much. Mm-hmm. Yes. I'm ready to connect, but just don't touch.
Right.
Or yes. I want the truth, but soften it for me. And unfortunately, we have to go all in and we have to say yes. And it has to start right inside of ourselves. So that's a little beginning.
No, that's fantastic. I really appreciate that you shared that history, because you touched on several things here that are, part of the happy life agenda. And probably the number one thing when we start having conversations is, are you ready to change? And it's true, is how many people I've encountered since I started on this journey that are just like, no, actually this conversation is making me very angry. And it's like, okay, well, that's a sign that you're not quite open, but you have some things to face.
Mm-hmm.
And then the connection part that you brought up, because at the end of the day, all of this is about that connection. And so I like that those were like the very big pillars that stood out for you and have led you to where you are today. Now, when we've
Mm-hmm.
talked in the past, you said that a lot of the parents, when you started doing this counseling, recognized that the things you were teaching them to help them be better parents also help them be better leaders. So you can talk a little bit about that overlap and what you saw.
Right. Yeah. So just as I was saying, I saw generational patterns within child protection. I saw the patterns in behavior and the connection with the parents and the teacher and the child. And so I am someone who sees patterns. I see it in behavioral patterns, emotional patterns, energetic patterns. And so what I'm noticing as I've been doing, conscious parenting for 30 years and leadership coaching is that these are the exact same skills. To be a conscious parent is to be a conscious leader. And until we start recognizing that in our world, we're going to kind of keep these two roles separate. But what I've seen with all of the parents that have come to me and worked with me, and it's work on parenting skills, but it's personal skills, because it's the growth happens in here. We cannot teach what we do not know. So we have to learn it first, and then we can teach it and model it to our children. And what any person who's come to work with me, they'll come in with a parenting challenge. We'll talk it through. We'll have a new skill, a new a new mindset around it, a new skill set around it. And then I can translate it to how it's showing up in their work as well. Or vice versa. They come in with a challenge that's happening at work. We can talk it through. We can find the patterns. We can see the emotional signatures and energetic signatures that are happening in the body. And then how do we apply that to the children? So I'm doing this intersectionality between the two all the time.
Wow, that's fantastic. You and I were talking before we got started today, as I recently read a book called The Confidence Code. And it talked a lot about how in the book it says superstar moms, because it's talking about rhesus monkeys, but that we're, born with these genetics that say we're predisposed to be anxious or to be worriers or, depression, all of these like negative traits, but that a superstar mom or superstar parent can overcome those and actually change the epigenome. So can you dive into that a little bit? Have you seen that in your practice?
Of course, I can't say that I have seen from the rationalistic, reductionistic scientific view that I've changed an epigenome. However, I do know that this is how we change the world, is by turning on these new sets of skills and capacities within inside of ourselves. So we have a VUCA world. I don't know if you've ever heard of that terminology. It's volatile, it is uncertain, it is complex and chaotic, and it is ambiguous and filled with anxiety.
Wow.
VUCA. We are in the great turning over of something, or what I like to say is we are in the process of giving birth to something new. And we all know, as mothers who have given birth, which I have done 3 times completely naturally, I have breathed through every single birth, and it is excruciatingly painful. It is filled with fear. It is contraction and expansion and contraction and expansion. And this is the process that
Mhm.
we as a globe are going through because there's something new coming. And the children that are coming to us, that are being birthed into this world right now, again, like I said, 20, 25 years ago, working in the school system and working with kids, I could see a pattern of a new, like we've had the whole indigo children have come through. What is up with this pattern of behaviors that are changing in our children? A mentor that once told me said, these are children who are actually from the future and they're being born now to help us change.
Wow.
Kind of a cool
How
thought,
interesting.
right? Twist your mind a
Yeah.
little bit there. So, what are they helping us to do? They're helping us to recognize that all of our systems that we currently have are breaking down. They don't serve the children. School systems, I believe, do not serve our children. When I went through my divorce and I'd homeschooled my children for a few years and I was going back to get a job because I was like, going through the divorce and all my survival stuff was coming up and financial and and the painful process of that, I could not walk back into a school system because it's a dead system to me. It doesn't feel alive. And it's like a zombies and heaviness and density. And I could not walk back into that because it's not a system I believe in anymore. And I do believe that kids are showing us the way. They are the canaries in the coal mine. And if we are willing to listen and see their behaviors, we can see that they are telling us it's time for change. Coming back to shifting the epigenome. Okay, so what do we do as parents? I can only teach what we know. If we are filled with anxiety, our children are going to have anxiety. If we don't have confidence, our children are not going to feel confidence. If we don't have the courage and the leadership skills and all of the things that we need to be in the complexity of this world, our children are going to feel that. It's just the nature and the nurture. Plus, we have the DNA, which comes through our DNA from our generational patterns. And so, what we can do in this world is we, as the adults who are raising the children, take that yes deep within their hearts, that hearts know to be true, that we are able to create something new. And when we say yes to that, we start our change process. I call this your calling. It is claiming your very calling to start the process of change so that you can lead your children, because your children are the leaders of tomorrow. And we know we don't have great leaders now. So it's our generation to start training the leaders of tomorrow. And that is why I'm such a champion for children. And I used to work with children, right? I used to sit with children and counsel children. I have counseled children in Waldorf schools and huge public schools and in detention centers. And I've worked with children who've been sexually abused and who've been the abusers. I mean, I've worked across the spectrum of human society, and I can tell you that they are capable of change. They have their own blueprint within them. And we as the adults have to do the waking up process to claim our calling of transformation for us to be able to teach and model for the children.
Oh my gosh, it's so fantastic that you said that. I've been recently on my own journey. It started with a leadership consultant, and I've watched my daughter who had a lot of anxiety, struggled a little bit with academia, and now when me going on that journey, watching her change and evolve, and it's so true. It's because I'm able to foster the things that are naturally in her better because of that change. So I want to
Yeah.
step back into something that you said. The generational thing is one of the leadership consultants I've talked to. He talks a lot about family of origin and that it takes, one person to finally break that pattern in the family tree. And so if you could
Yeah.
tell our audience, like, how do they recognize, what kind of look back do they need to do to recognize what those patterns are and start saying like, oh, I need to get some help to break these patterns.
Yeah. I mean, I love that. Yes, I do believe there's always one person in the family. And I'm definitely that person. I experienced child sexual abuse from a babysitter that my parents trusted. And I had to be the one to bring that forward into the family. I had to be the one, even though I shut it down for many, many years. When I started finally doing my process, I had to face it. I had to have the courage. I had to uncover it. It is that turning over and seeing what's there, kind of what we are going through right now in this world. There's a great turning over, and we're really seeing what is. So if you have felt like, what I like to say is spiritual warrior, a mischievous misfit, a wildly wicked, or a conscious rule breaker, like those people, we struggle and we're pushing up against, and we're not understanding, and we feel like we're kind of outside of the status quo a bit. These are the leaders that I love to work with, because that is, part of my own journey. Um, and that is the key to start looking anywhere that you bump up. So I have a podcast, not like this. I do a very private daily podcast out to my subscribers, and I call it the hearth, because it's the fire. If we are not looking at the fire, the heat, the pain, the tension, the friction, right? If we're not looking at that, we're not waking up, because we are afraid of it. We love fire. It keeps us warm. It feels great. We're mesmerized by it, but we're also don't want to get anywhere too close to that heat. And actually, we have to get into the heat, because the heat is what burns away all of these generational traumas. It burns away the density that we carry in our bodies with all of these belief systems. It burns
Yeah.
away. It's so necessary to get in and get close to that heat. And I have been doing this work for a long time. Obviously, everything I have learned myself, I have applied it in my own life. My children call me to be coached. They know it. And they're like, mom, I know, and it's so funny. Because they know it, right? And I'm like, okay,
Right.
do you want me to sit back and listen? Or do you want, no, just listen today, mom. Okay. No, coach, tell me, right? So as young adults now, I can just coach them through the adulting process, because this is now when they're waking up to their own patterns.
Yes.
So wherever you feel heat, wherever you have friction, your most intimate relationships are your path to your spiritual awakening. You have to pay attention to that. These are the most vitally important relationships, and they are guiding you. That's why children are your mirrors. They're showing you exactly where you need to develop and grow and burn away some shit. And I call it shit on purpose, because the stress, the habits, the irritations, and the triggers.
Oh, I like that acronym. That's a good one. And
Yeah.
it's easy to remember.
We all
Wow.
got shit.
That indeed.
Yeah.
I really like that you say, I like the analogy of the fire, because I've been talking a lot about, getting comfortable with being uncomfortable, and it's getting close to the heat is very uncomfortable, but when you can start to like really face those things, that's when the real change happens. That's when you build character, and that's when you see what you're really supposed to be doing and who you are. So it's fantastic that that's like at the core of what you
Yeah.
do. So if someone is, kind of thinking they're hearing this podcast, or they come across your website and they're like, wow, I think this might be for me. Is there, any pre-work? We kind of alluded to some openness, but what would you say would prepare somebody to be able to be open to working with you and
Yeah.
these conversations?
Yes, I call it claim your calling. We often think of calling as the vocation, but it can be claiming yourself, claiming this desire, this pull that you have for something more, claiming if it is your calling, like yourself, stepping out of corporate, following your heart, your passion, right? So that's the very first place, is claim that. So I have a free audio for folks who want to listen to that on my website or through my Instagram, Micheline Green _coach. From there, we have to find our yes. So much of my work is somatic work. It's deep within the body. I'm looking and working with the autonomic nervous system. I'm helping people. I like to say I'm tracking fear in their bodies, be able to help open it and unlock it so that they can walk as love in action. This is what we're all needing to do. We all have love as this lovely feeling, but then when you piss me off, my heart goes and I'm closed down and I'm armored up and the connection is gone. This is what we're seeing in this polarities. So to be love in action is to have my heart still open, even when I disagree, even when I'm in a challenging moment with another. How do we continue to be love in action? So from claiming your calling, you have to find your yes, and your yes is in your body. It's in the subtle sensations. I mean, so many of my clients, I ask them, so what do you feel in your body? I have no idea what I feel in my body. And yet we all have this language, right? Of, punch in the gut and butterflies in the stomach and, you know, tingle in the chest or, we have language for it, but we don't know what it's connected to. So it's called interoception, going in and sensing. And so this is a skill that I work with my clients. And then, of course, so then we do a deep dive into the body, and I call that be all in. You have to own your body. And just think of how many of us, especially women, but a lot of men too, we hate our bodies. We shit on our bodies all the time. And we cannot be in harmony with ourselves and in hate with ourselves at the same time. It's not possible. So if we are wanting to wake up into love as action and harmony and lightness of being, we got to go in to the depth and the density and the darkness. And I do that. Let's bring it full circle back to parenting, because what stops us is we don't have that deep, deep, unconditional love that our parents were not able to offer us. And so that is what I offer my clients. I'm able to hold that safe space where you are held and unconditionally loved, so that the most powerful self that you are and the scariest part of yourself and the most intense part of yourself can be present, because that's who I am. And that's what I know I am able to do. And that's what I hold for others. And so that's the place where we build that capacity for depth of love for self and others.
Wow, wow, that is like I've got chills. It's so cool. I mean, just the thing you said about the body because, I say again, I'm on my journey and that's the number one thing is I've always been very in tune with my body, but I have these foreign aches and pains right now, but I know it's because I'm going through like this really big change. So thanks for bringing that analogy. In fact, I
Mm-hmm.
want to make sure our audience hears real quick something that we talked about when we were talking a few weeks ago is that really your program is like a 9-month program and that's very intentional. Can you touch on that a little bit?
Yeah, sure. So my 9-month one-to-one coaching, really, it's like quantum becoming. It is a true becoming process. And I break it down into 3 trimesters, because make a new baby is 9 months. To make a new you, it's 9 months. And so I see this pattern again and again in my clients that I work with. And so when I work one-on-one, I only work one-on-one for 9 months. And my other courses, I have lots of other offerings that people can start to get into. Like I said, find your yes, be all in, claim your calling. But once you're really truly ready and you just want to get into like quantumly becoming who you are meant to be, your truest, most authentic self, to just transparently be in this world with your massively beautiful, big and open heart, that is having to go through these 3 trimesters. And so the first trimester is it's really rapid. It's a lot of cell turning over. So we're quickly and looking at how are you currently approaching things right now? So it's quite a rapid process of like, oh my God, I see this and I see this, because it's an untangling of the current way. We are all so overly identified with our identity, and therefore we need to start seeing our identity from a objective way, because so many of us just see it from a very subjective way.
Yeah.
So I call this the subject to object move, to be able to see. So that's the first trimester, is really getting to know how are you and your identity and what's wrapped up in it. And it's a detangling process. In the second trimester, this is where we've got things are a little bit more settled, right? We have a little more energy, or we're now like just kind of enjoying the pregnancy a little bit. And so this is where we're really starting to look at what is the new way of being that's already within you. I will never, ever, ever tell you who you are. You know who you are. Deep, deep within you. You have the codes, the blueprints, all of the seeds within you All I'm supporting is the right environment to help crack that open. And that is the beautiful process of identifying who is this new way of being that you know in your heart and soul you are meant to be. And so that is the next area of just like, okay, let's start building these skills. So we have these two interacting now, and you're being able to see them. You become the scientist of your own life. You're able to see that in action. You're able to make the choices. And in the third trimester, this is where your new way of being is now truly anchored within your system. And you've now are just building the solidity of the muscles of your body, your emotional signature, as well as this new way of seeing the world, which once you see it, you can never get that tube back in the toothpaste. It is such true beauty that what we live in. Our world is so glorious. We are just such majestic beings. And once we can start seeing that and feeling that, this is when we're creating the new world.
Oh my gosh, I love that. That's so just phenomenal. The deep work that you do. I've interviewed a few people that touch on this and stuff, but I like you go really, really deep. And I think that, to your point, is the world really needs that, and it's going to have an impact down the line that we're truly ready for. So, Michelin, thank you so much for
Yeah.
telling me everything today. I'm just so excited. I know I'm going to have to talk to you more because I think we only touched the tip of the
I
iceberg here.
know. I
Uh,
know.
so if anybody wants to get in touch with you, I know you mentioned your Instagram handle, but if you can kind of take us through your website and all the ways to reach you and let our audience know.
Yeah. So MichelinGreen.com. And I have this beautiful name, Michelin, which is named after, everyone says the tires, and I say no, like the stars. So I call myself the 5-star coach, which all of my clients give me 5 stars because I guarantee the work that I do. And so Micheline Green, and Michelin is, you can see how it's spelt, .com. You can claim your calling. Free audio is available on that site. And you'll see kind of what is power, what are the portals of power in your life, passion, purpose, parenting, and partnership. And reading a little bit more about me and my journey. And then my Instagram handle, Micheline Green _coach. And then I also have access to my podcast if you're interested in listening to some really real and honest and like, it's just really my own personal journey of right here, right now. What am I working on? What am I dealing with? And this is a practice as much for me to show up in this beautiful, transparently open heart. Okay. Cause I still am working with it. Like, right? Like, it's like on an edge. We're on an edge here. We're all on this edge together. So let's normalize this, that we're all stretching on this edge. So that's the Hearth podcast. And you can come through there through my Instagram, Facebook, or my website.
Oh, fantastic. I'm definitely going to be checking that out. Thank you so much. I also am going to be working with Michelin. I always like to write a blog. So I'll be reviewing this content and some of the discussions we've had to get that on the website for our Happy Life Agenda followers. So you have plenty of ways to find and get a hold of Michelin. If you enjoyed today's conversation, make sure that you hit subscribe below and follow us on social. Thanks so much, y'all.